Hello, everyone, and welcome to SD Spooky Adventures Ghostly Tales with Janine and Debbie. So, today we're actually going to have a special guest with us. I'm Janine.
Hi, Michael.
Debbie.
Now, Michael is a director and cinematographer for Cinamason Film Productions, and he has some ghostly true life stories that he wants to share with us today. Hi, Michael.
Hello. So I go over like right into them, correct?
Yeah, go ahead and let us know. What is your first story?
All right. I'll say okay. So it's kind of strange because they all happen like close to the same time frame. But I was doing a kind of tour or going ghost hunting at the 10th Avenue Arts Center, and I was with Debbie Duncan's group, Psychic Fixes. I was we were just kind of exploring. I was like, I had to download this app, where I can detect like ghostly signatures, that sound for the most part. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a spooky place, and I got this, and this thing's spewing random words. I was like, okay. So at first I thought it was a little funny because, with this app, I don't know how credible it was, but it was playing ads every 5 minutes. It's like, I don't want to know about like Chutes and Ladders here or Candy Crush. I want to figure out what's going on here. So I would get these words and so forth, and go into this place called the Murder Room. And it has all these shining, posters and little photos, from the movie and so forth. So it was my first time being in here, so I didn't know what to expect. But I would go up on the other floors and start to feel like some presences, as if it feels like, I don't know, it's kind of like an off kind of feeling, when you come across this activity, as it were. And I was like, okay, I didn't really think it was anything spooky in that regards, but other than the fact that it just felt really weird. So I go back downstairs and I go back into that murder room, and back in this little device I have on my phone, and then instantly, right then and there, I see the word shining, come up. And I'm like, okay. So a device, how would this device know that there was shining like posters in the room? So it threw me for a loop. I was like, what? So that was my first experience right then and there. I mean, of course, I have a few more experiences in this building, but that one right there, I was like, okay, this is not just this thing actually works.
Michael, I've got to tell you about the murder room because
Tell your story, Debbie, because we were all there when it happened, and it was quite interesting.
It was very interesting. So the murder room, we call it that because they painted it red, and they have paint dripping like blood and handprints all over, and those photographs. And so I do readings in that room for people, and we do mediumship. Janine and Sean and Chris, who's watching, is there too. So anyway, this one time I'm sitting there, I've got Sean and Janine opposite me on a little table here. And we had already seen quite a few ghosts. We saw this big man. We saw a girl. I saw a little boy in the other room. And we were just kind of talking when all of a sudden something entered my body from behind. And I'm looking at Sean and Janine, and I'm saying, what is that? What is that? Something's going through me. And they're just sitting there watching the show. And so
she literally froze. She froze, and she was kind of stuttering, like she couldn't talk. It was really interesting.
It was this big part of energy going through my body slowly. And then when it released, I was like, it went out. And I said, so what was that? Janine, do you remember what that was?
It was a man, and he kind of was watching you, and you were kind of connecting with him and the little girl spirit that was there. And he just all of a sudden turns and slowly walks through you.
Right through me.
And that was that I'm here.
I was so glad it happened because then I got to experience what it's like, because I always take, those, Michael, the space blankets, you know, in an emergency, they put it around that foil blanket to warm them up. And I always have water for people because we had a lot of problems in the theaters and stuff where people would have to just leave the building. They get out of the room or leave the building. But I wanted to know, well, what are they experiencing? You know, like, are they wussies? Come on, you know? And then when I had that, I go, I now know what it's like to have a ghost walk through you. It is not the most pleasant thing. It's uncomfortable, but it's like a whole bunch of buzzing energy and then when it goes out, then you feel it. There's a tug. So anyway, Michael, that was crazy.
I felt that. I actually did have like a similar sensation. To me, it felt like as I'm walking through a corridor, which is the same place, it felt like a rush of anxiety, like go through me within a few seconds.
Oh, wow!
And then when that happens, you're at the tail part of this. I felt that, and then I come downstairs, and you're in the foyer area, and then like I felt like this cramping and pinching, right here, that just kind of just stayed there. I'm like, well, what's going on here? Then I tell you what happens, and you pray over it, and all of a sudden it dissipates, like instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's like, what the heck? What's going on here? I mean, like, and so forth, because they kind of just latch onto you in that way.
Yeah, well, when they come in, they can go home with you. But my job is to make sure that nothing goes home with anybody. If anything gets close, I've got we call it scrabbly juice. I have my stuff that takes it away. And some people that are watching know about the wampum tree and Janine. So we can dissipate those, I call them gumbies and scrabblies and a little bit stronger things. We can take care of it. But that theater is haunted.
Yeah, I'll say this, within arm's reach, I still got your stuff like by my window. Comes in handy. Never had a problem in this place since.
Yeah, I'll say that the way I always describe it to people is it kind of feels like you're frozen, like you can't move, like your feet are pinned to the ground. And then that sensation you get when your feet or hands fall asleep starts to kind of overcome your body with static electricity. It is definitely not comfortable. But the most important thing is, most spirits, if you tell them to stop it or to leave you alone, will obey you. Then we have a few like the wampum tree where Debbie has to come in and get them with that scrabbly juice, and they do not like that at all.
Well, we needed to. We had that dark apparition, and you guys were getting scratched up.
Yes, and the scratching is kind of unreal because it doesn't look like a normal scratch. It turns bright red. Your skin stands up on end. And then the next day, it looks like something burned you. It doesn't even look like you were scratched. It looks like you were burned. It's very interesting.
It's like somebody took something and went like this, and you could see your skin was standing straight up as it went, like shaved it. And when I got to you, you had all the skin standing up. So we did the first aid. And then Sean was all scratched up, his legs, and then I went after it.
that was an interesting investigation too, because we were live on Psychic Fixes, and as we were talking about how we couldn't stand on our feet, everybody knew that we were sincere in what was taking place because on the video you could actually see things swirling around us, and so it was quite intense, like being in a hurricane or a tornado.
Yeah. It was so funny. I'm over out that way with my group, and when I see you and Sean, you guys are backing up like you have that force of wind coming, and you're backing up like this, and I'm like, put everything down and said, stay together and let's get this out of there, because we didn't know what was going on, but you could tell that it's just like you were being pushed.
Yeah,
crazy.
So back to the 10th Avenue Arts Center. I know we spent a lot of time in there with the Dead Talk, as well as you, Michael, and your wife, Jamie. Did you have any experiences in the chapel area where the priest hung himself? Because I know that Debbie has had an experience in there, and I also had an experience where we filmed what looked like an orb moving across the wood and dropping like it hung itself.
The chapel is that blue and yellow room, correct?
It's the main theater area when you first walk in.
First floor.
Yes. first off, yes, and yes. But mostly what I felt is like in the hallway area, but like the number one area that I felt the most is the kitchen.
The kitchen.
The
That was
kitchen.
Kitchen.
What was
very
it?
active.
David in the kitchen.
The kitchen is probably like my next story. So you want me to go?
Yeah, let's go into the kitchen.
Let me just say that I wasn't in there with all these people in the kitchen. They had gone where they wanted to. By the time I got there, everybody had like the Ovilus app or something, and it was dark, and all of them, these massive people, there was red coming off of it and screeching noises. And then, but Michael was there.
I filmed that part. My let's see that now. If I recall this correctly, I remember what the footage looked like. I was there filming, and I was just in the kitchen because I felt like that tingly kind of feeling in the air a bit. Filming my camera, and I see it go up from green to yellow to red, and go extremely red. And then I was with Jamie and one other person, and then in there, and Jamie says at first, like, I feel a pressure. And then next to me, he says, I'm beginning to feel something else. And I started to feel not just an intense pressure, but like this microwave kind of tingling feeling, the intense pressure on my head and the back of my neck. And I didn't like it. So
that actually was a ghost that I've encountered before. He comes that way.
Happened, and then I had to get out, like run out of the room just to have this spell.
A lot of people felt uneasy in that kitchen.
That psychic that was on the other side of the door, the kitchen door. Michael, were you there when someone went into a little room and got kind of scratched up?
I saw that. I saw a scratch on the neck, like two scratches, like right here. And it was how you described. It was like kind of like that burned kind of feel, kind of like that scratch look. If that makes any sense. Because like he did this with his neck, and there was like the two scratches like right there. Yeah. And I saw that. I came in at like when you guys were right, you were hiking about it.
Right. Well, we knew that there was something in there, and I said nobody go in there because there is something in there. And one of the people that went in was a very well-known psychic, and he went in, and I think he was really surprised that he couldn't control it or whatever, and it got him. Because
that whole area on that floor was kind of intense, like that little theater that's connected to where the kitchen is, and then the little changing room to the side. We actually just recently did an investigation at the 10th Avenue Theater just a few months ago. And what's interesting is my friend Dave was with us. And from that room, the office kept saying David. So we took Dave in the room. And it was happy that Dave was there, and it would only talk to him. The feeling in that entire area was not a good spirit feeling. I'm not saying anything demonic, but I'm saying just not a good spirit. It was not a comfortable feeling at all.
We always had problems with that. I don't even know what story it was on. That little theater, the tiny one.
It's the second floor right next to the kitchen.
People were always sick or weak in the knees. And I, every time that happens, we get them out and everything. That last time I went in, Janine, and I'm not afraid of these things. Right. But I went in there and I said, darn it, for Pete's sakes, I'm so mad because my knees were going out.
Yep.
Why? I'm not afraid of you.
That's the thing is like both of us are very strong and we're strong-willed and we're not afraid of anything. But there was multiple times that I felt faint or
I had to get
out.
I was
going to pass out in that theater.
I thought I was going to fall down, and I was mad the whole time. Like, why is it getting me like this? And I stood out, and then, you know what? I don't think I've been in since. But we'd have people physically ill,
we did have that one woman, because we visit that floor pretty quickly when we do our lockdowns. And the one woman paid her money to come on this lockdown. We were there maybe 20 minutes, and she said she had to leave. She had to leave the building. And so we had to let her out, and she paid for an entire 3 hours and was there like 20 minutes. It was too intense for her. She had to leave early.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people just leave and go home. Chris, Oliver, Janine, tell about the light blinking when we ask questions.
So I'm sure many of you are familiar with theaters and how at the end of the night, most people believe that theaters have their own ghosts inside them, and many of them do. So at the end of the night, they put out a ghost light or a stage light. Some people believe that the stage light's there, to make sure that it's safe, obviously, that everything else is out. We don't want you to fall off into the orchestra pit if you were to forget your prop. But some do believe it's there to scare off ghosts, where others believe it's there to say, hey, by the way, ghosts, we're done with the stage now. It's all yours. And that way they don't interrupt our productions. So one night we were investigating, this was just a few months ago, and we were all in the main theater area. And the stage light was on, and we were just kind of talking, connecting with the divining rods and the ovulis, when suddenly we noticed, as we were asking questions, the stage light started turning off and on to answer them. So it would just turn off to say yes or blink twice to tell us no, and then it would just go back on steady. And it would only do this as we were asking questions. So I went and unplugged it, plugged it back in to make sure it wasn't malfunctioning, and it just continued to answer our questions using that stage light. Now, for those of you who've never been to the 10th Avenue Theater, that main theater used to be a chapel for the church. That whole block actually was the Catholic Church here in San Diego back in the early times. It took them almost 100 years to build that church due to finances, but they would leave that chapel open so that any of the military coming in, no matter what time of day, they could actually get in. We're going to go into the spirit that's connected there because Debbie definitely had an experience with him. But that chapel is where the priest ended up hanging himself after the death of a little girl because he blamed himself for her death. And so we do get a lot of activity in that area. But this was a first to have them connect with us using the stage light.
That's amazing. Michael, did you have more on the theater?
Yeah, I have. Well, in terms of the theater, I had those three core stories. My fourth story is in a mausoleum on Imperial Avenue. But I've been to that theater several times, 3 times this year doing film work. My crew has always been intrigued about feeling any entities there. But I told them every time we go, we got to have that sage on handy so nothing ever messes with us. So my experiences are pretty much the 3 that I've talked about at this point. Just feeling that activity, and then just all around that stage and kitchen area and hallway is probably the biggest spot for that activity, I would say.
So before we move to your mausoleum story, I do want Debbie to share her experience with the European soldier that is in that chapel area, because it was the very first time we ever entered the building, and she definitely experienced him pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was funny. First time I walked in, and I was waiting. I was early, waiting for everybody. I went and sat down, and I was looking at the main theater doors, and out walked a man in costume. I think it was a lion costume, and he was I'm going to say he's English, and they present to me sometimes like somebody familiar. So Terry Thomas was an actor that had a space between his teeth, and I think he was English. And so I go, oh, and then they kind of form the way they look. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's a ghost that's in a costume as a lion. And so I go, okay, well, I see all kinds of things. But then later on, they said there's a story, and Janine can tell you about that, of which I thought it was, I'm going to say English soldier. So Janine, do you have a couple of words about him?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you definitely, when you described him, you said the cowardly lion from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you did tell us about the British guy, and that's what it was. Mm-hmm. It was a British soldier. So the story is that he was fighting in the war, and he was a medic. And so he was actually trying to save a soldier. So actually, it wasn't the British soldier that was trying to save it. It was an American soldier that was a medic trying to save this British soldier. And so as he's trying to save this guy, he realizes that he's dying, and he goes to like the extreme of actually cupping the man's heart in his hand and manually pumping it to try to get his heart to start back up. That only works a fraction of the time, but he was all out just trying to make sure he saved this gentleman. So as he's pumping this heart and the gentleman dies, he feels this shock go through his body. And he said that it felt like he was going to pass out right there on the spot, but he was able to keep himself up. So this gentleman eventually comes back to the United States, and he ends up in San Diego. And the first thing he does off the ship was come to the chapel there at the 10th Avenue Theater, which at the time was the Catholic Church. And he's going to pray for this man who lost his life. And so as he's in there, he's knelt down and he's praying, and that sensation goes through his body again, like electricity. He feels like he's going to pass out, and this time he does actually pass out. Now, when he comes to, he is sitting in the chair. The priest is there with him, and the guy asks if he's okay, and they all of a sudden hear somebody calling cadence, and then they see a man in a British uniform marching through the theater. So what they believe happened was when he had that man's heart in his hands and he was pumping it manually to save him, and he died, that soldier's soul hitchhiked a ride in his body here to the United States. And when he was praying in the church, that's when he left his body. And we do still see the British soldier to this day in the theater.
It's amazing. Okay, Michael.
In San Diego, there's a cemetery off of Imperial Avenue. It's like a big cemetery and the whole thing. So I went to go see my wife's grandparents, great grandparents, and so forth.
Greenwood, maybe? Greenwood Cemetery, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So it's like I could count on one hand how many times I've actually been to like a graveyard in my entire life. So first one being Old Town, that hardly counts. But this place was like the big example of it. So after we see my wife, family members like lying there and that kind of thing, I looked around and I see like this big 3-story mausoleum, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what that building is. Is that an apartment? I don't know what it is. Is that a place where they just do business? I didn't know. So we just we're walking towards it, and Jamie explains to me, he's like, yeah, that's the point where they put like a bunch of graves in there in the 3-story building. I'm like, what? Never been in one of those places. So I walk in just to briefly check it out. Obviously, there's people in there with funeral stuff. The first thing I notice is like obviously the smell, because of I guess there's like exploding caskets over time, and the amount of marble and decay in there, so they had a really interesting smell. And then as I was walking around, just being kind of awestruck about this whole structure and like the little pond area in the center, I start to feel things. Like at first, it's like I feel my body just dropping in temperature, so it's starting to go cold. I'm like, okay, and then a few more moments later, it turns into anxiety, and I'm not prone to anxiety and so forth. So I know myself. Then all of a sudden, it's like I'm trying to go up the staircase, and like I start to feel like chest and cramping all of a sudden. So this is like a buildup of more and more like special things going on. All of a sudden, I'm starting to get head pressure right here, and then lastly, this tingly feeling. Then all of a sudden, I'm like, I tell Jamie, I got to get out of here. For whatever reason, I'm just not feeling right, because I'm feeling I build up all these different feelings. So I ran out of there. I feel like there's like this gush of wind behind me, just like pushing me out of this building. And all of a sudden, I start to feel better, like rapidly feel better. And then Jamie's like, we should probably just go home, kind of thing. But then that was the same day I call up like Debbie. I said, hey, this is what happened. And then she recommended I come over to her house and get what is called smelted. So that was
Smudged.
smudged. It's been a while, but yeah, smudged.
I remember when you got there and I was ready with everything. I met you at the car, got you in. I didn't want you really going through my house because I didn't know what was on you. We got by the pool in the backyard and I got out all my stuff. And you were sprayed and blessed and, everything.
I know,
Everything to make sure you were
and everything. that was an interesting day, and that had nothing to do with the 10th Avenue Theater, but that is what I feel like a full extent of everything I've ever felt. No scratching so much, not that intensive pressure on the back of my neck, like I did in the kitchen, but I felt like to the full extent. I felt my knees getting heavy. So when you say that there was this week in the knees thing, then yeah, I could understand that. So
yeah.
That's kind of reminds me of the Ensfield thing that we were just talking about our last episode, because those poor girls, they were feeling that same pressure on the back before they were possessed. So whenever we feel that, it just kind of makes you a little uneasy, I would say, for sure.
Yeah. When I'm doing a reading and I have a spirit come in to have some input to the reading, they come in and they just lightly push me in the back. There's none of that tingly, a little bit of the tingly stuff, but there's a little push. But when we get into this mix of stuff, especially if people are empaths, so it can take you over. It can be very overwhelming and people faint or they go down. There's nothing quite that you can do when you have all that happening, or if you have active entities in that building that want you out or, want to go with you, things like that. So, Michael, you're in the same boat that we've been in. But can I tell you about infield? So last show we talked about infield hauntings. And Janine, I have synchronicity every single day. And I should be mapping it and writing it down to see what's going on. But I went and turned on Antiques Roadshow. Just randomly did it. It came on, and there she was. Hi, from Infield, England. We're at the Antiques Roadshow, and I was like, "Are you kidding? Of everything, of any place you could be there, they're in Infield." But if you guys get a chance, it's based on a true story. So the Infield hauntings, but it's pretty scary.
Yeah, I definitely think that we'll probably have to do a second episode just on Enfield because it's such an interesting case. Since I've watched it, I've had 2 weird dreams involving Enfield. Like that little girl was following me on one of my tours. Like I've had some really weird dreams. I think it's just saying that we need to delve a little bit further into it, maybe because we're both having weird experiences around it.
I have a question. Michael, Halloween, weren't you dressed up as the clown? Was it you?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, he was.
Okay. And you had balloon?
I mean, it's okay. That was a weird night because it was Halloween, and I had a friend who was just begging me to dress up as it. And honestly, I ended up looking like a really messed up Ronald McDonald because of how my hair parts, and I didn't have that bold kind of thing like going on right there. So yeah.
I remember there was a little taunting. Some people were taunting, I think, David in the kitchen and whatever. And I remember you leaving. And what happened when you were trying to get out that front door?
Okay, so that taunting, we went to the same exact kitchen where my friend was I told him what happened. I even showed him a little video I had, and he was taunting him it's like, come on, if you're gonna do this, pop that balloon, blah 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 blah. I need you to do this. I did not know you're real. They was cursing at the ghost. You were telling Brian, to stop doing that because I'll just agitate him, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And think nothing of it. Coming down the stairs, and all of a sudden, before we get down the foyer, the balloon pops.
Yeah, and I think I was there, and I think you said, if you're real, then pop the balloon, and boom, exploded.
Yeah.
And I was like, see, I try to get people not to taunt the spirits because I don't think that's a nice thing. But I know we have so many tours. People have been drinking. There's all kinds of a lot of things that was going on. So they want to have something happen. But we've had a lot of things happen. And Michael, thank you so much for all your stories.
No problem. Thanks for bringing me along on helping them.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Michael. And we definitely would love to have you back on again in the future to share some more stories, because I'm sure you have plenty of them. Thank you again, Michael. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Well, let me bring up something bring up a picture. I believe that's it. There we go. Janine?
So most of you know my name is Janine Haynes. I'm a psychic medium, a Reiki master, and I also am a life coach and a published author of My Paranormal Life, Growing Up Psychic. Book 2 is on its way this October, so keep your eyes out for that. It's out on SD Spooky Adventures. We also have an SD Spooky Adventure YouTube channel where we will be posting these podcasts, but myself and Michelle also do a separate podcast. Go ahead and check us out there. And then, Debbie, let's go ahead and talk about your stuff.
I wrote a book with my co-author, Kara. It is about my life, but it's a fantasy. It is about past lives because I'm a past life reader. And it's called The Past Lives of Deborah O'Hara. And historically, it's correct about 98%, but it's a lot of fun. And it does have the real seances, me going through a portal, which all happened. All the stories and the readings are true in my book. And I have the series Fig Willow and the children's series, but the adults like it too. So next time, maybe I'll have one with me here. So that is what's new with me, Janine.
Also, if any of our guests have some interesting experience ghostly that you want to share with us, even aliens, Bigfoot, any of that, we would love to have you on. So definitely send us over a message to Psychic Fixes or SD Spooky Adventures, and we will get you on our show to share your stuff with our guests.
Yeah, we can talk about all kinds of things. If you guys have questions, let us know. I'm psychicfixes@gmail if you have any questions. We have Psychic Fixes Facebook page and YouTube. I know that when I'm not working, I just shut it off. I'm lucky enough. I'm not an empath. Thank you, God, that I didn't do that. But I can pretty much shut things off. But if I don't ward the house, then they are, there's something floating across the thing. Something's going like this, or bang, 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 or whatever. And then you go, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, it's like a moth to a flame. Like we're a beacon, and they just sense us, and they just start coming in. Yeah, I try sometimes to just turn it off, and I have my little symbols of like when I'm open and when I'm not, and so I'll pull my hair back in a ponytail if I'm working so that I don't get messed with. But there's every once in a while they'll try to, ignore that, but they'll be like, "No, I know you see me. Stop trying to ignore me." They want to be able to communicate whatever it is that they want to communicate, or just prove like, hey man, I know you see me.
That's for sure.
Definitely be back next Sunday. If your guys peeled on Psychic Fixes or SD Spooky Adventures, we'll let you guys know who's going to be on with us next Sunday. It'll be the same time. Definitely share our podcast with your friends, and make sure that you head on over and subscribe to both Psychic Fixes and SD Spooky Adventures YouTube channels. And if you don't already like both pages, go ahead and give us a like as well.
Okay, guys, we're going to sign off. And so thanks for watching.
Thank you, Debbie. We'll see you next time.